and thank you for joining me for the Vampire Talk Show. I'm your host, Valaine. Val to my friends. My roommate discovered my coffin under the concrete floor of the basement in her new house and woke me up from a 100-year nap. Now, I'm reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, and of course, making a podcast. I have a fantastic guest tonight, but first, I have a bone to pick with big network streaming services. Those in the paranormal community, especially on Twitter, have been all a Twitter this week about Living for the Dead being taken off of Hulu and Disney+. Now, paranormal content, of course, is a little bit permeating the culture. Paranormal is hot. Paranormal is cool. It has been for years. You can't throw a rock without hitting some sort of paranormal content. However, these are usually male-led and heteronormative, if you ask me. So, the one queer-led paranormal show is just taken off of streaming services in the dead of night while everyone's sleeping. Something smells a little fishy to me. Well, not just paranormal, I will say. In the past year, I don't know if you've noticed, but there have been a lot of other things that have been taken off of streaming or canceled that are queer-led or female-led or non-binary-led. And these things are serious. And I know this is a very silly show, and I know I'm a comedian, but I believe this bears talking about. All of our content that we consume is catered, is procured, is tailor-made for the quote-unquote wide audience. Well, when the wide audience does include you, how does that make you feel? We need to start making a stink about things, folks, because this is not cool. And this isn't the first one that I've had a huge problem with. I don't know if anybody remembered a show called Willow. It was actually a series that was based off of a movie from way back in the day. And I loved that show. I know it was very polarizing for fans of Willow, but we had a lesbian couple. We had a pan-coded character as well, which was fantastic. And it just, once again, Disney and Hulu just pulled it off in the middle of the night, and now you can't see it anywhere. It's not just pulled off of streaming. You cannot get it in a DVD form, a Blu-ray form. You can't get it anywhere, unless you maybe pirate it. So maybe we should dust off our pirate hats? Maybe that's how we get around this thing. We need these stories because it is history. And history erasure is a thing that happens to people who are marginalized, and this is how they wipe out cultures. So, stay woke, stay vigilant. Let's get queer stories back on the air, at whatever cost it may be. Anyway, and I say this, and I've been wanting to talk about this, and I have the perfect guest on my show tonight that we can just kick things off talking about queer stories because they themselves are telling one. Please welcome my guest, an award-winning paranormal investigator, Dash Kwiatkowski.
Thank you so much for having me, Val. I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I've got a lot of thoughts about this. Because our stories are elevated only when they serve empire. When they serve the American Empire is when our stories get to be told. And that's so much of why it's easy to just sort of cast it aside. This is why you see so much solidarity across, the people who are paying attention. There's you see every rally for Palestine has a strong queer contingent, has a strong, trans flags and gay pride flags. I don't think that it is a coincidence that Hulu and Disney Plus kicked off or booted this queer ghost hunting show in the same year that Hulu ran pro-apartheid, pro-genocide ads for the genocidal rogue state that is so-called Israel, and Disney donated millions of dollars to that state. All of these things are in service of empire, and there is a reason that the famous picture of Nazis burning books, there's a reason that in that picture, the books that they are burning in that iconic picture are the works of Magnus Hirschfeld, who was a queer Jewish German man who was working in an institute on studying transgender people, working with transgender people. Those books, like literally the picture that everyone shares around, a lot of times it's it's weird right wingers who are trying to make a point about censorship that they don't even understand themselves. But when people show that one picture of Nazis burning books, that's literally the works of Magnus Hirschfeld being burned, which is about queerness, about transness. And so Hulu Disney Plus kicking off a queer show makes all the sense in the world to me, because though that company works in service of empire, and as we see, fascism sort of on the rise globally, fascism on the rise in the West, as we have our modern day Democratic Party is being endorsed by Dick Cheney and
Mm.
has policies that are to the right of George Bush Jr. even.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. It makes sense that, our stories are no longer deemed palatable to what people want the mainstream to be. And I'm not even going to say the mainstream. It's what the powers that be want the mainstream to be. They want it to
Mm-hmm.
be hateful. They want it to be fascistic. They want it to be um small. And I think that it is not surprising to me that a queer story was removed. Also, Willow rocks. I miss Willow. I was so excited. I love that
Thank
show.
you.
I was so excited as it was coming out. Love the movie. The show was great. All that, there's so many just like interesting, they had so many interesting story threads to follow, and it is a true shame
Oh
that.
yes, after waking up from my nap, I was introduced to a game called Dungeons and Dragons,
A great one.
and because Allie is a huge nerd, and she introduced me to it, and I could not help. While watching Willow, I was saying to myself, "Boy, this feels like a D&D campaign,"
Yeah.
because it had a certain silliness to it that was just very pleasing and warm and lovely, and had very real moments like you do at the table in your storytelling. So yes, huge Willow fans over here in household Bachman. Um, and when you're talking about serving empire and that
Yeah.
sort of thing, so there's what's interesting because the work Liminal
Yes.
is self-produced and
Yes.
it's not owned by any network or anything like that. So you said there needs to be something told about this, and then you went out and you did it. You didn't wait for contracts or agents or anything. Can you talk about what
Yeah.
chutzpah this took?
So I love the sort of the strange. I love the sort of the mysterious space that sort of I think is intrinsic to paranormal investigation. I love this sort of permanent this permanent unknown. I think that a lot of people, when they approach paranormal stuff, I think they approach it with this idea of snagging a piece of Bigfoot's fur or getting a hard piece of evidence, and I simply don't think that you can in a lot of cases. I think that it's sort of definitionally um undocumentable in sort of a hard scientific way, and that's what's magical about it to me.
Hmm.
And I think something about lived experience and how sort of idiosyncratic it is. Each person's experience with a haunting or a cryptid or anything like that is so specific to that person's experience, and it's very real and it's very felt. And I was thinking about this idea of liminal spaces and spaces that are sort of in flux in between, and how much that I think resonated with me in terms of gender and gender identity.
Hmm.
And so I got this idea for what if we did a show that is not just we are queer and we're doing paranormal investigations, but rather tries to explore what seems to me a specific and sort of intrinsic connection between those two things. Um, and so I hit up my friend Rosa, who is my best friend and works on all sorts of goofy stuff with me. We co-host our own podcast. There's a psychic advice podcast. Um, and I was like, hey, I want to do this show. Do you want to do it with me? It's not going to be goofy jokey the way our podcast is. It's going to be like like an earnest attempt to do paranormal investigation. And Rosa, again, ride or die, was like, sure, let's do it. And
you gotta love friends like that who are just down for anything.
Down to do whatever, yeah. And so I found a filmmaker who was eager to work on something new, something that he hadn't really worked on before. He, I believe, is moving to Canada, and we will be working with a different filmmaker who was a longtime friend who ended up editing our pilot episode. And so we were just like, hey, you know, we can do this with a skeleton crew. Like we can do this just with like us, and like there's my partner helped with like holding like the Zoom recorder and the boom mic and stuff. And we were just like, let's just shoot it. Let's just shoot this and then kind of see what happens. And then, you know, we were told by people, a lot of people, because I don't have any industry connections, but I'm definitely friends with people who have industry connections who are like, oh, you got to sell it, get this pilot cut, try to sell it, do all this stuff. And so we're like, okay, that's the advice that we're being given. We'll try that. And the thing is though, like, I don't know people. And so I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to do this. And I'm researching and I'm making pitch decks and all these stuff. And then I'm watching just like, again, Willow's a great example. I'm watching all these queer shows just get the axe. And I'm watching like this consistently what I hear from people is like, yeah, you can sell a show and then someone else will own it. And then they'll cancel it. And then they'll just sit on your rights till, you know, to whatever your concept and your thing and everything. And at some point I was just like, honestly, like, I think this would feel better if we're just sort of in charge of it. And like, you know, it's harder for sure. You got to do fundraising, you got to do all this stuff. We ran our Seed and Spark campaign that was successful. It was very exciting. We're going to be shooting episode 2. And if I can stretch the budget, I might be able to get us a 3rd episode in there, and I'm very excited about. Our 3rd episode would also be in North Carolina, which I'll say just as a quick aside, find a mutual aid in North Carolina. If you're listening, there's so much help is needed in North Carolina right now. The flooding from climate change, which everything is connected. You know, if people think that America giving thousands and thousands of pounds of bombs to a nation state that is just deploying them sort of willy-nilly free is not affecting climate change, like it's a climate issue, it's everything. But we are facing climate stuff, and it is, you know, if you're listening, find a mutual aid in North Carolina. People need help very, very much.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up.
Of course. So yeah, both of our episode 2 and episode 3 will be set in North Carolina. So if we're able to film them both on the trip, I'm budgeting right now, but we might be able to, which would be very exciting. That's a big might. But yeah, you know, it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder having to figure funding out, having to figure all that stuff out. But ultimately, it feels good to not have a producer breathing down our neck to be like, oh, you have to do this, or you have to make it spooky, or you have to like make sure something happens, or all of these things, because that's not the story that we want to tell. You know, we never want to.
Corporate daddies are overrated, if you ask me. And you know, I think that's why there's been such a shift over to YouTube and that sort of thing.
Definitely,
because now you have content creators who are creating their own networks. And I think it's funny that streaming services are now like suffering, quote unquote, suffering with their still millions of dollars. But the tide is turning towards things being back into the hands of creators. I mean, people are still selling their souls, obviously, because some of them just don't have the wherewithal to do it themselves. However, I feel like there should be like some sort of like like a dating app for creators, where it's like a writer seeking a cinematographer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Wouldn't
actually.
that be wonderful? And then you can just like swipe through and just, look at people's resumes and whatnot. And then if you swipe each other, it's like, ooh, we can be on the same project,
We should have like one too where like a project or a creator can get. I think it's time to return to the weird eccentric rich patron of the arts. We got to have more. There's so many weird rich people, and they could be. Alexander Pope only got to make stuff because weird rich people were just giving him money for stuff. And I'm saying in return to that. And I'll even say this: if anyone is listening who is trying to set up some sort of house on haunted hill, I've got a paranormal investigation team. We'll do it. We'll get. You know what I mean? Like if you let us film a couple episodes first, and then we'll come participate in some sort of. Yeah, House on Haunted Hill is the first one that I can think of, but otherwise, 13 Ghosts maybe.
13
I've seen
Ghosts,
the movie.
fantastic.
I'll be careful about it. I try not to get the one dude who is it the guy who was in Buffy? Is he the guy who gets hot dog style?
Oh,
He gets bisected hot dog style.
oh my goodness, I can't remember. Is it Matthew Lillard? No,
No, Matthew Lillard gets beat up by a different ghost.
that's right.
And a different guy, the lawyer, gets
Sliced
bisected.
down the middle. I can't remember.
Right down, yeah, hot dog style.
Hot dog style.
Well, you got hot dog, you got hamburger. Those are the two.
Oh, you're talking about folding paper like when we were in school.
Yeah. I'm talking. Yeah. I imagine you have some experience with bisection as a
bisection.
Vampire.
Yes, I quite in more ways than one. Yes.
Right, hot dog and hamburger style.
I do go both ways. Always. So yes, this return to power to the people, power to the artist. I love this idea.
So much of this is, especially in the paranormal field, none of it's like. None of it is objective stuff. It's highly subjective. It's highly idiosyncratic, and every different voice is going to have something wildly unique to say. You would hope. A lot of people who wear cargo shorts and do it have the same thing to say, and so that's different. But a lot of other people have unique things to say, and genuinely, I think makes product better, like a better watchable, viewable project if you have a lot of different perspectives in it.
I agree, and unfortunately, that's just not the way things are because, and it almost feels counterintuitive. It's like, here's this thing, it exists, and oh, people seem to really like it. Well, let's make another one. Why? It already exists. Let's make something else. So yes, I feel like algorithms have really screwed us all over.
Definitely.
I feel
in multiple ways. I'll say as a person, I'm a competitive Pokemon player on occasion. That's a whole. You can see my little ditto on my.
Yes, as that's what that is. It looks like a ghost to me. Yes.
The algorithm, you watch like 3 Pokemon, like videos about competitive Pokemon on YouTube, and the YouTube algorithm is like, oh, do you want some like Gamergate Nazi stuff? And it's like, no, but also that's terrifying because like I'm an adult watching Pokemon videos. I know what I believe politically, but like there's kids watching. Like Pokemon stuff. And the idea that watching a couple of video game videos, the algorithm is like, hey, here's some men's rights activism, here's some fascist stuff. That sucks. So the algorithm has screwed us over in a couple of major ways.
Absolutely. Actually, recently, Allie had a friend stay over, and her friend is a competitive barbershop singer, and was showing us videos of competitions for barbershop.
Cool.
Now, every time we bring up YouTube on the television, it's nothing but barbershop videos. Which
hell yeah.
I honestly. It's bizarre. There actually, just a sidebar here, a side note. There's a documentary about barbershop singing. It's called American Harmony, I think. I'll put it in the show notes. And when you watch it, it's like you're watching a Christopher Guest like
Good.
mockumentary,
That's all I want.
but it's
Good.
100% real, and it
That
is
rocks.
fantastic.
I love weird people being weird, and I love a specific interest
Oh,
thing.
yes.
So
Yeah, niche interests I think
yeah.
are fascinating. And if you can find a documentary about it, it's just the best. Speaking of documentaries, Liminal,
Yes.
see how I bring it back? I'm a
As
good
you brought it
host.
right back.
I'm a
Yeah.
great host. What can I say? So Liminal is beautiful.
Thank
It's
you.
not shot like other paranormal shows. Yeah, you know, when you think of like ghost hunting shows, you always think of like night vision. You always think of IR lights, shaky cameras, and running and screaming and that sort of thing. If you're into network paranormal TV shows, that's what you're used to. However, Liminal, the lighting is nice, even though it's dark. You know, you have single points of light, and it's beautifully shot. Especially I was quite taken with the part where you're in the woods and Fox is doing the ritual and there's snakes and everything, and
Yeah.
oh my goodness, it was beautifully done. Can you talk a little bit about the process of like trying to shoot a documentary this beautiful but also keeping it spooky and paranormal?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you. I appreciate the high praise. We talk a lot in terms of the creative process, and one thing that we've said is that we are always, if there are sort of two poles for what we're doing, and one is reality TV and one is documentary, we're always going to try to be sort of exist in documentary. And I think
There's a good distinction there. Reality TV versus documentary. Yes.
yeah, and part of that is, we say a lot like I never want to be a ghost show where we walk back in and the faucet's running and a door slams and all of these things that are just sort of feel like, are easy to manufacture. And
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, I love to watch a trashy ghost show too.
Oh,
It's fun. It's
absolutely.
fun and it's goofy
It's
and
entertainment. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
talk so much shit about them all the time in both loving and hateful ways. But all like we're never gonna bring on an exorcist who dresses like a line kick or a line cook or a professional bowler. Like that's
Mhm.
not the vibe of the show that we're trying to do. We're trying to. I'll say I don't imagine we'll ever bring on any exorcist personally, just given how sort of just very Catholic. It's a lot of Catholic sort of right up in there in the whole thing. We for aim for sort of as genuine as is possible.
Mhm.
And part of that means that every time, and I mean every time we are traveling to a location, I have this part where I'm like, God, I hope something spooky happens. I really hope something spooky happens, because if not, we're going a very long distance for potentially nothing. And then every time something has, which is great.
Yes.
But it is very important to me to exist as genuine as is possible. I've been thinking about this a lot, just in terms of like, even in that, because you can never be when you're filming, you can never shoot something that is fully there, because there's a lens, there's a light, there's everything, there's something making it artificial. You cannot escape artifice. There's the deck of tarot cards that I like to use for the
Mhm.
show. It's called the Carnival at the End of the World deck. Really wonderful deck. Really wonderful deck. The creators of it gave us permission to use it on the show. The card that I have sort of connected with the most in that is the Magician. And the
Mm.
magician in this deck is a person in sort of like a theatrical, like magician, like stage magician outfit. But for a head, it's a camera with many different lenses. And
Oh,
so the sort
wonderful.
of the idea, this magician, especially like in the book, there's a book called Madame Lulu's Book of Fate. That's like the companion book to the deck that has like it's sort of combination prose poetry for each entry. It's a
Mm.
great book. It's a great project. But this magician is sort of all about movie magic and sort of like real versus what is portrayed versus what is genuinely experienced. And I think about that a lot in terms of like, I'm never going to script out a scene for this show, but I will
Mm-hmm.
say something, and sometimes our documentarian, like the director or the person with the camera, will be like, "Oh, hey, can you say that again? Because there was a buzz in the back, or there was a
Mm-hmm.
truck driving by, or something happened." And so I'll say it again, and that doesn't. I don't feel complicated about that because it's still I'm not making anything up. It's just sort of a retake, but the retake takes you one step sort of further from what is the true genuine experience of the moment.
I mean, and it does all come across as genuine. I mean, there were a few scenes. I think there's a scene, like one of the first scenes, you're sitting on a bench and there's like a siren in the background.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like retaken or anything like that.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh, we're doing it for realsies.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. I was like, okay. It was almost like instead of a siren, it was more like a dog whistle to me personally,
Totally.
because I've done projects before, and to see that, I was like, oh, we're sticking into the real world here. You were supposed to be on the show before Liminal dropped.
Yes.
And I just got so sleepy and I
Happens.
had to take a nap for a couple of months, like a vampire has to do every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
At least it wasn't 100 years this time.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to rebook 100 years post, but I'm glad we were able to.
I don't know. I think you'd make a lovely vampire. That's just my
Thank
personal opinion. And I don't say that to a lot of people, let me tell you.
you.
So we were going to talk about your new project coming out.
Yes.
Let's talk about what has happened since then. What has happened since everything has dropped? Because, there was such a buzz going around. Like, as far as I know, I was sleeping, but Allie told me that, wow, like, Allie couldn't scroll Twitter without seeing your name, like, every single day.
Well, cool. The pilot dropped. Our crowdfund for episode 2 was successful. We also released a bonus episode featuring Ray Wise from Twin Peaks. That one is out. We actually got to do a really cool live debut of that here in where I live, where there's a cool little like sort of queer space DIY venue.
Aww.
And we got a crowd all masked, I will say, very important to me. We brought a crowd, and then we did sort of like a live auction fundraiser as part of the crowdfund because it was in the middle of going while we debuted the Ray Wise episode, and then we led everyone in a tulpa creation ritual to make a sort of a guardian figure for the cool queer DIY space, whose name was Phil Gravy, is what the tulpa told us its name was. We were using a Estes session at the end after the creation. We were like, all right, now let's talk to it with the Estes method, and it was very fun, very cool. And then I've just been in pre-production I've been in pre-production for episode 2 and planning potentially for episode 3, and in the if I'm able to string the budget together. And for episode 2, we are going down to North Carolina to work with best-selling author and Priestex. They use they lead a coven of Wiccans, and they're just a cool weirdo who I am very, very fond of, named Mortellus. They make spirit boards, they make like magic soap stuff, and they do a lot of death work, both like magic and sort of mundane death work. So they're very cool. Episode 2 is going to be a profile of them, and we're going to be working with them and seeing like the stuff that they're working on and doing some stuff on their property that they have never done with anyone paranormal investigation wise before. And we're going to start actually shooting little mini-sodes here in New England. So I'm really excited to get out into the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm excited to we're going to actually, to your interest, we're going to be doing a mini-sode on some of the New England vampires, sort of the New England vampire scare as it happened. We're going to be doing a mini-sode on just sort of like mushrooms and the fae. I'm a person who forages a lot. I do a lot of mushroom foraging, and so that feels very relevant to me. And then we're also going to be doing one on my friend who accidentally created a ghost tulpa in a very they had a project that they were working on. They didn't kill anybody, and every time I say accidentally made a ghost, people are like, did they kill someone? No, that's not how. There's more than one way to make a ghost.
Oh my goodness, dear, your ignorance is showing.
Yeah, exactly. But they had a project they were working on where they were quilting using old Korean fabric and
Mm.
working on the idea of Korean trauma as haunting and as ghost. And so they interviewed me for this project. We were both mixed Korean, sort of in diaspora, and they're telling me about this project. They're like, yeah, I'm creating this thing and I'm writing this thing about ghost and haunting and sort of the personification. And I was like, first of all, you are doing magic on accident, as you should know. That you are doing
100%.
magic.
Yes. No. Stitching, and weaving and
Yeah.
crochet, even crocheting. Like I always tell people, like if you are one of those couch crocheters, make
Yeah.
sure you're like you have good music on, or like
Yep.
you're watching something nice.
Yep.
Don't do murder shows or anything
Right.
like that, because it gets into the fabric, it gets into the fibers, and I love the idea of creating something like a tulpa, like out of that.
Yeah. So they were making it with this idea of haunting and ghosts specifically, which I was like, you're super. And they're like, okay, for sure. And I was like, you should name it. And they're like, I don't know. And so I was in California for the Ray Wise episode, and they texted me and they're like, hey, do you remember the thing you said about making a ghost? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, I was ironing it and I accidentally left it on for a couple of seconds and it burned, and it burned a face. Like the burn was just a face. And I was like, yeah, I told you. I told you that's what you were doing. Also, let me talk to it. Can I talk to it? So we're gonna do a mini-sode on that as well, which I'm very,
that's
very
wonderful.
excited.
Well, I'm glad you're doing these mini-sodes, because I definitely, after finishing the first episode of Liminal, I really wanted more.
Definitely.
Well, my friend, I am glad that you're on the show, and I'm so glad we got to talk about Liminal, because I have been dying to and been dreaming about it and everything else. So, but now it's time for some paranormal gossip. For tonight's paranormal gossip, we are going way down south into Florida. And down in Florida, who is there? Our good friend Swamp Ape. Yes, Swamp Ape, our stinkier Bigfoot friend. If you're not familiar, basically Sasquatch, but Florida. So you do the math. And so our friend the Swamp Ape has been recently going incognito as a swamp person on a fan boat, trying to give tours to people. Now, you'd think that, oh, good for the Swamp Ape, going in for business for himself. You go ahead, you go girl, that sort of thing. However, it is more of a scam than it is a business. So what he does is he will be near one of the parks where there's like those wooden like walkways and such, and he will see rich tourists from the north, and of course northerners, so gullible, and he will say, hey, because he can talk, he says, hey, do you want a fan boat ride around the Everglades? And of course they say, yes. And so then he'll pile people onto this fan boat and then take them out into the middle of a swamp, drops them off, says, I'll be back in 45 minutes. If you go that way, you can see an old bootlegger camp, and you can see some of the old things that they had there. And it's fascinating. Take pictures, put it on Instagram. I'll be right back. And then he does not return. He drops them off in different locations, so he has not been caught yet. But now he's evading capture for real instead of for sport. So that is tonight's paranormal gossip. Are you familiar with the Swamp Ape, Dash?
Yeah, I think this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I think it's the perfect crime, and frankly, I'm not the kind to fleece tourists, but if that is what Swamp Ape wants to do, tourism itself is it, it's such a I don't know. I think tourism is so often used as sort of a justification for gentrification process and all sorts of things. And so, if Swamp Ape is trying to teach tourists a sort of a valuable lesson, and I'll say this. No, who better to do it? Swamp Ape
True.
has been avoiding capture, has been avoiding documentation for a very long time. I think it just makes sense. I think it makes sense to use that natural skill and that natural ability to commit tourist fraud. And I don't know where he got that. I don't know where he got the boat from.
I was just about
Um,
to pontificate and wonder about this fan boat. I mean, I assume he stole it, but maybe that is a terrible thing for me to assume on my part.
Maybe I don't know. It could also, a lot of people think that Swamp Ape, as well as other sort of Bigfoot, sort of step in and out from other dimensions. And
Hmm.
so, I honestly, surprised that a fan boat made by men could even carry the weight. So it could even be from another, it could be an interdimensional fan boat.
Absolutely.
Always a
Maybe,
possibility.
yeah, he was in another reality where he owns a fan boat and just brought it over
And
here.
he's just using it over there for fun, and he was like, "This, I gotta start
Start
making
making
money off
some
this thing."
moolah and then,
Yeah.
put another addition on my beachfront property.
I am wondering what he's spending it on, but I guess that's between Swamp Ape
Right?
and the Cold Hard Cash.
More disguises is my guess. Maybe
Yeah,
a
no,
lot of
that makes
razors.
sense. It's of just a large, because I do think that's your tip off, is if you see someone in like a duster or whatever that pervert jacket that people wear.
Pervert jacket?
The pervert, the jacket that every
A
flasher in the movie
raincoat
wears.
is what you're talking? A raincoat?
Yeah, no, that's just a raincoat is probably what I meant. But I think, okay, but to be fair, I
I'm
think of the
sorry.
raincoat.
Pervert jacket is what it's going to be for the rest of my life now.
I think of raincoats as yellow, like the baby on the salt wears, and I think of a pervert jacket as more of a mottled brown color. as a pervert is wont to wear much. Yeah.
Point
Mhm.
of order.
Yeah.
The pervert jacket
Yeah.
uh as kind of a brown color.
Mhm.
Immediately what sprang to mind was Dana Scully from the X-Files.
Okay,
I would
sure.
not peg her as a pervert,
Fair.
but
No, I mean, you don't know. I was thinking more the gremlin from the Gremlins. The gremlin
oh
from
yeah.
Gremlins.
Yes.
Yeah, is sort of who I had in mind. I guess the pervert jacket, I'm thinking specifically, it's sort of the what's his name from Casablanca. I was thinking of the actor
Humphrey
who I'm also
Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yes.
That's
Humphrey
sort of what I
Bogart.
sort of imagining when I'm saying pervert jacket.
Oh my goodness. Oh goodness.
But I think that if you see someone in a pervert jacket or a raincoat, if you're trying to be proper about it, in the Florida Everglades, that's your first tip off that something is not on the level,
Yeah,
because you'll
it's
be way too warm.
way too warm, way too humid,
Yeah.
way too sticky. If you have a bit of gossip, a misconnection, or a personals ad to share with the show, please email thevampiretalkshow@gmail.com or slide into my DMs on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, or Threads now. Yes, I am now on Threads. Dash, thank you so much for being on the show. I really
Thank you for
hope
having me.
that your next episodes go off without a hitch. Where can everybody find you, find Liminal, find everything?
People can find me. I'm on social media just as my name for the most part, so it's just at Dash Kwiatkowski. I'm sure the name spelling will be in the episode title or the liner notes or something.
Yep.
On TikTok, I think I'm dash.liminal, which makes sense. All things considered. And then people can find Liminal on Instagram at Liminal TV. On TikTok, I believe we are also Liminal TV. On YouTube, we're youtube.com/at Team Liminal. People can go to our link tree, linktr.ee/Liminal TV, and that has all of our links and the episodes and everything on there. So that is the easiest place to find all of our stuff. And yeah, no, I would be very happy to come back on the show whenever you'll have me. I've had a very nice time. Yeah, happy to come on truly whenever.
Thank you so much. Everyone can find the link tree in the show notes. Well, that's all for the show tonight, kiddies. And remember, embrace the dark, the strange, and unusual. It just may embrace you back. Please consider becoming a Patreon member of the show. You can be a Baby Bat Sticker Club member where you get stickers every month, or you can be a Tarot Speakeasy member where you can get a tarot reading and tarot cards sent to you every month. Please subscribe on patreon.com/The Vampire Talk Show. This has been an Opus Nox Media production. To find out more, go to opusnoxmedia.com.